Central Iowa, the culinary and crossroads of the country, rather. We're broadcasting from Des Moines here in the Skywalk. We're going to be talking about core curriculum later in the program. That's education standards that went into place not too long ago that have interestingly developed opponents on both the political left and right. We're going to talk with Andrew Rasmussen with the Des Moines Education Association about that during our New Beat on Education segment. That's the second half of the program today. We're also going to talk about poaching, about the efforts being made to end the illegal destruction of elephant and rhino herds in Africa, and also the local biodiversity angle as well. Monarch butterflies, they're beautiful. They're also extremely important in terms of our environment, our agriculture, and just for a lot of other good reasons. But before Peter Clay joins us for that conversation, I do want to share a little perspective on the Democratic primary that's shaping up for in the race for governor. I've been there and done that, of course, 2006. And the first salvo of that campaign back in, would have been 2005, was the Story County Democratic Party event. Apparently, what is being labeled the first salvo this time around is the big event up in Cerro Gordo County, Clear Lake, near Mason City, the Wing Day. There were about 400 people showed up for that. And I remember that event really well because I decided I was going to have fun with that event. You know, each candidate got, 5 minutes to talk. So I used about 3 minutes to talk, and then I just couldn't resist it. I grabbed my guitar, and I played La Bamba on the stage of the Surf Ballroom, where Ricky Valens had played it shortly before he died tragically in a plane crash. Anyway, I didn't get elected governor. I didn't even win Cerro Gordo County. In fact, I got third in Cerro Gordo County, but I got to play La Bamba at the Surf Ballroom. How cool is that? Anyway, on a more serious content note, Tyler Olson, Bob Krause, and Jack Hatch all gave speeches, as reported by Kathy Obradovich. Again, I shouldn't say reported. It's an editorial piece. It's an opinion piece. And she's pretty harsh on Krause. And again, I did not hear the speech. So maybe he did, float a dud. I don't know. But, Olson, again, getting a lot of applause. And that's hard to, you really can't gauge that. A lot of that could be orchestrated, prepared ahead of time. Okay, on this cue, y'all applaud, that sort of thing. He's kind of didn't talk much about Branstad. He focused on a new governor, a new generation. Interestingly, I mean, he would be slightly older, I think, than Branstad when Branstad was first elected. How frightening is that? So anyway, the Hatch is the one who came up with an interesting start, I think, here. Again, I'm just going by what Obradovich wrote. I wish I could have been there to hear the actual speeches, but Hatch he came out with both fists flailing. I've seen him do that before in campaigns. Sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires. He feels that the reason Democrats have lost 5 times to Branstad in the past is because of running a conventional campaign. He says we've got to just take it to Terry Branstad, essentially. His message was clearly, writes Obradovich, aimed at firing up the base, but Hatch will need to proceed with care. By defining his campaign in terms of his willingness to attack, he runs the risk of turning off swing voters who despise incivility and negative ads. Not just swing voters, but a lot of primary voting Democrats, too, will really sour on that sort of thing. I think Hatch's first ad, cute, clever, struck a nerve, struck a chord. Not a bad one, the Smokey and the Branstad ad. Anyway, maybe if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. It's a lot of fun. Again, I don't know where this race is going to go, and I don't have a strong opinion about it. But anyway, folks, that's again the opening salvo of the Democratic primary for governor. There'll be plenty more to talk about as we move forward through this year and next spring. Okay, moving on to bigger issues, literally bigger issues like elephants and rhinos that are increasingly the victims of poaching in the African countries where they have, long been prominent. There are efforts underway, though, that look to be trying to find solutions to eventually eliminating poaching. And I'm delighted to have Peter Clay in the studio with us. Peter is a longtime advocate and activist on issues relevant to wildlife and biodiversity. He was with the Great Bay Trust for a long time, and has made many trips to Africa. Certainly one of our local experts. And this is an issue, again, we don't think about what happens in Africa as a local issue, but gosh, when diversity is at stake, it's an issue that affects the entire planet. And we will talk about the monarch, butterfly side of this biodiversity issue as well. But first, Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed.
And what is the problem? First of all, why has poaching increased on rhinos and elephants?
Well, it's based upon demand. The demand is mostly coming from Asia, and it's now among the top 5 international illegal activities, along with drugs, human trafficking, counterfeiting, and global arms sales. Between $7 and $10 billion a year is what the wildlife trafficking, poaching and trafficking.
And specifically for tusks?
Well, that's everything. That's all animal trafficking.
Okay, but when we're talking rhinos and elephants, it's the horn of the rhino and the tusk of the elephant that people are after?
That's
the
right.
Ivory? Okay.
That's right, yeah.
And I don't even know that biologically. Okay, I associate ivory with the elephant's tusks. The rhino's horn, is that the same substance or something different?
Oh, no, completely different.
Really?
Yeah, it's analogous to matted hair, I think, or keratin. But
matted hair?
Yeah, I mean it's. I'm not actually completely
so rhinos
up to speed on that, but it's
having a bad hair day.
Well, this year alone in South Africa, upwards of 450 rhinos have already been killed in 2013 in South Africa. That's on a record pace. Last year in Africa, probably 30,000 elephants approximately were slaughtered, and
30,000.
30,000 last year, the most in 20 years. When I first came on your show, it was in regard to an article, scientific article about forest elephants, which people, for the most part, don't realize are a separate kind of elephant. And they're not the elephants people typically think of, the large savanna elephants. But the decline in forest elephants was carefully studied, and they shockingly found that between 2002 and 2011, something like 62% of the forest elephants were killed. So
for the same reason, for their tusks.
Absolutely. Okay. But they're harder to protect. I mean, they've been slaughtered in these deep forests in Africa where it's very hard to protect them.
And again, the reason is ivory and rhino horns are both up. There's a higher demand for them.
Yeah, ivory and rhino horn are worth more than their weight in gold.
Okay, but for a while they were in decline. For a while these products weren't. You can't use them anymore in piano keys, for example.
Yeah, well, that's been reversed. I think there was one legal sale of ivory a few years ago, and that really hasn't been helpful, probably. And I think people just need to recognize what we're seeing now is unprecedented. This slaughter is unprecedented. It's international criminal activity going on across continents, with the range states where the animals live being the source of these animal parts. And then there's transit countries, and then there's the consumers, mostly or principally in Asian nations. But again, $7 to $10 billion a year. It's right up there with international arms, narcotics, human trafficking. It's right up there with all of that.
Yeah.
And these are big time criminals. I'd like to quote an email I just got this morning from Dr. Serge Vick, who was here recently for the conservation conference, because I asked him what would he say if he was on the show today. He's a leader in conservation and in new technologies, specifically drone technologies to use in support of wildlife conservation. Dr. Vick says that he would certainly say this is a wildlife crisis beyond what we have seen before. The level of organized crime involved in this is much more severe than ever before. This means that park rangers are facing extremely well-trained people that more often than not outgun them. Because of the severity of this crisis, we need an international response in which the international community helps these countries to halt this wildlife crime by providing funding, training, technical expertise, and equipment. And then his final line here is that President Obama's commitment is therefore very timely and welcome. And I do want to underscore that, when I first came on your program some months ago, it was because I'd written a letter which got published in the Des Moines Register.
Yes.
Well, obviously, I'll never know what part my letter had in the president's decision to initiate a cabinet-level task force, which he did in Tanzania recently with folks from various departments. And the commitment of $10 million to help Tanzania, South Africa, and I think Zimbabwe with combating elephant poaching and rhino poaching. It was a very, very significant announcement. It acknowledges that this is an important issue globally. It encourages nations to join in this. And I hope that your listeners who care about this will follow up by realizing that all their voices actually matter. So I don't know exactly what my letter accomplished, but it was one of many voices.
We're going to give you full credit.
Yeah, no, I think not. I think not. But I guess I really encourage, especially people, to contact Congressman Latham to let him know that this is an issue they care about. To prop up his environmental credits and make sure that in 14 months when he stands for election that he realizes he has a constituency of people who care about the environment, including wildlife around the world.
Right. So the part of the problem, though, is not increased presence in areas where poaching is a problem. I mean, you can't just fight firepower with more firepower. You've got to fight it with changes to laws that regulate the sale and the trafficking of these products. And so, what is being done on that front? That account?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to sanction the demand and to enforce the existing laws that are in place in China and Vietnam and other Asian nations that are fueling all of this. I don't know that we need new laws. I think we need better enforcement and better compliance. And I know
but enforcement at the local level in each country.
By local, I mean in those countries. That's right.
And what is the law here in the U.S.?
Well, the endangered species in international law here, the U.S. law, the Endangered Species Act, absolutely protects endangered animals and any products made from. So
it's illegal to sell a rhino horn. It's illegal to make a piano key from ivory.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, if you try to bring in these kind of animal parts into the airport here or O'Hare or anywhere else, it'll be confiscated and you're facing big fines and prison time.
But people do buy ivory objects that are in an antique shop or who knows where else. So that's okay because those are made before the law went into effect, I presume, or is that even that problematic?
That's very problematic because it's very difficult to actually provide the provenance of ivory. You can claim that it's old. I'm not exactly sure what the law says about buying ivory products now. I suspect that all ivory is illegal in terms of sales in the United States.
So if you already own something made of ivory, a piano with keys, for example, you're allowed to keep that. You just can't.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true, right?
Yeah, and you could sell the piano if you wanted to, but.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to get. I'm fascinated by the minutia of this because this is where it gets complicated.
Well, the minutia aren't as important as the big picture, which is that there's international criminals who are doing unspeakably savage things all across the planet, slaughtering the wildlife, draining the forest, draining what's left of the natural world of these iconic species that we all care about and who serve important roles in global ecosystems.
Are there countries in which their governments are being less than cooperative in terms of trying to get on board?
Well, sure. I think resources are limited, and there's always political constituencies that work at cross purposes. One example is they're recently in China are sort of fidgeting about whether to burn tons and tons and tons of confiscated ivory. They should just destroy it. But they have this compunction about burning the ivory because it's supposed to be valuable. But by failing to destroy it, they're really extending the problem.
Yeah, they should learn from the French, who got really good at. Well, that's a different issue, really. Yeah. But destroying things that are valuable to create toward a higher end.
Right. But I just think also the president needs to hear from people and his administration that we support what he has done. It's really significant. It's very, very significant. Yeah. It's largely unprecedented, this level of attention. The resources by measuring it against the need, $10 million isn't really that much. It sounds like a lot of money for you or me, but it's the beginning. It's the beginning. And as long as we let people know we're paying attention, we care, we applaud this, we want to see more, we want to see more nations involved, we're more likely to get more action.
And there is specific action being requested by the U.S. Congress as well?
I'm not sure. The president was exercising his executive authority to mobilize a cabinet level task force. That's what he did, and I'm not sure exactly how that worked with the 10 million, but he has some discretion with the budget, and he's earmarked that money to go toward these African nations where they're struggling to combat this international criminal syndicate, really.
Let's switch gears from big to small, from far away to close by, and talk about the monarch butterfly situation. Again, they are threatened as well, and a lot of the threats to their migratory patterns is a factor of climate change. There are other problems as well, but this is an insect I understand that travels further than any other insect to accomplish its migration, which is pretty amazing. But from Canada all the way to Mexico. Right.
Yeah, there is no other animal, insect, who migrates as far. Among animals that are insects, this is the one that has the longest migration. Last year, the population was the smallest in Mexico it's been recorded. Less than 3 acres of monarchs were overwintering.
Really?
Yeah.
What has it been in the past?
I'm not sure exactly.
But a lot more than that, huh?
Yeah, a lot more. I think it's been like a 30% decline over the prior year.
So how do you, this is a different issue than what's affecting the rhinos and elephants. Climate change, it's hard to know. I would guess it's hard to know exactly how to fix that problem.
Well, it's not just climate change. It's illegal. It's illegal lumbering, destroying the forests where they overwinter. It's industrial agriculture and pesticides and herbicides that are destroying the milkweeds that they absolutely depend upon.
Right.
They're nectar feeders. Really, the monarchs are stand-ins for all pollinators. If you look at the newsstand right now, I just saw the lead story in Time magazine is about the demise of the honeybee and the profound impact on our food sources and on our way of life the loss of the honeybee would have. Monarchs are stand-ins for other pollinators, nectarine feeders. And it's not just about the fact they also, as elephants and rhinos are, in a sense, are iconic species. They're species we recognize and care about. And before we realize they're gone, we should start paying attention. But it's something you and I can take action on. People here who care about elephants or rhinos may feel helpless. They're not. Their voices matter, but they can actually take definitive action to help the monarchs by just planting a monarch oriented garden in their own yards.
Milkweed, for example.
Right. Well, way stations, they need places to stop. Sure. And Blank Park Zoo is just starting a new program with other Midwest zoos to create more way stations. There's less in Iowa than any surrounding state. We need to bump that up.
Well, there's some tension there, of course, because you get farmers spraying for milkweed, trying to kill milkweed.
Well, that's right. That's got to change. That's got to change.
Well, how do you tell a farmer, no, you got to let the milkweed that's encroaching on your soybean field continue to compete for nutrients and water? How do you do that?
That's the bigger issue of biodiversity is we convert natural landscapes into these monocultures of corn and soybeans. We're losing more than we understand. We're disrupting and destroying natural processes. We're losing ecological services. Short-term gains are ultimately going to be our downfall here. And so it's many factors with the monarch, but we have to change how we do agriculture. We have to address climate change. We have to stop illegal forestry practices. We have to think more holistically about the landscape.
Again, locally, you said a lot of the migratory path of the monarch butterfly. They all end up in pretty much one area of Mexico, correct?
My understanding is that that's correct.
So, and they come from all over North America.
Right.
So, at what point do they funnel through Iowa?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the migration pattern is. There's actually a film at the IMAX Theater at the Science Center now, which focuses on this. I'm sure that's worth seeing.
But there's enough coming through here where these way stations would make sense.
Absolutely. Oh, there's almost 600 way stations in Michigan. There's only 160 in Iowa.
How many? 600?
600 in Michigan, about 160 in Iowa. And we can ramp that up, and we should. And the zoo is joining with other zoos throughout the Midwest to try and address this need. And interested citizens who care about this can get involved in many ways. They can contact Jesse Lowry at the zoo, conservation coordinator. They can go to monarchwatch.org to get information about how they can plant the right things, milkweeds, in their gardens. Even like a 10 by 10 foot area is meaningful. So this is one place where all of us can actually take specific action and we can see the beneficiaries come and enjoy what we've done.
Yeah, and again, it's not just milkweed. There are other.
I think that's right. That's right. But you need to have other nectar producing plants, and that's another reason why this is really about more than just these butterflies. It is about all of the pollinators. I don't know how much you've read about the impact of loss of honeybees, but certain crops like almonds, we may be not able to have some of the food products that we need, some of the fruits and
the vast
nuts.
majority of our fruits and vegetables depend on honeybees to some extent.
And it's not well known what colony collapse disorder is really caused by, but I think most people think it's multiple factors. So again, biodiversity is about a lot of things,
right?
And but it's something which is it's everybody's responsibility to become a little more educated about the biodiversity crisis, which is related to, but still a separate crisis from the climate crisis.
Folks, I meant to throw out the phone number to call. If you're listening to this program live on the Fallon Forum website, the number to call is 244-0077. Toll free, it's 855-244-0077. You can also email me at fallonforum@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook. And if you're listening to the show on KHOI 89.1 in Ames, it's a rebroadcast from Tuesday. Same goes for KPVL up in Northeast Iowa. KPVL 89.1 FM. This is a rebroadcast. So if you want to hear the show live or participate in the conversation ever, just call those numbers I gave you, and we'll always welcome input from our audience. I do want to share one comment here on Facebook, Peter, from somebody who is a strong agreement, who says, this is Hazel Zimmerman. She says, since the agribusiness chemical industry is set on destroying the milkweed that the butterflies depend upon for food, I am cultivating milkweed patches in my lawn, fence rows, and pasture.
That's great. And that does make a difference.
Yeah. Again, she's not just on her yard. She apparently has farmland, and she's... Yeah. But I mean, that's I could see how that might anger the neighboring farmer who might be downwind from her place, who might say, yeah, now your milkweed is getting into my soybean field and causing me to lose... declining crop yields and having to use more chemicals. I see where that conflict comes in, but I think your point about short-term gain is what we really need to keep in mind here.
Right.
And sometimes individuals might have to sacrifice their own, the ideal crop yield they want in this case for something that's a greater good.
Yeah. The way we do business isn't sustainable. We all know that. We're number 49 in water quality in this state. That's appalling. And a lot of that has to do with the inputs we put on the landscape every year in the way of fertilizer and runoff of animal manure. It's not sustainable.
And again, that's a much bigger issue to get your hands around, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. But all these things kind of connect. So.
Well, you'll be happy to know, Peter, that I sowed some butterfly milkweed seed earlier this year.
Great. So you're ahead of me.
Well, we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, I'm just learning about this issue, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm playing catch up here, and there's a lot going on. Every week, I know you probably receive at least dozens of requests to sign petitions and so on, and there's so many things that demand our attention, but we can't respond to everything. But I think the global environment is shared. The climate crisis is real. The biodiversity crisis is real, and these have profound impacts on our lives today and for our children's lives, and we really need to just focus.
Well, again, thank you, Peter, for joining us and for enlightening us on a couple issues that, again, most of us probably don't know as much about as we need to. And again, thank you for convincing President Obama to appropriate $10 million to help defend the rhinos and elephants.
Well, I hope people will be heartened by that action taken at the executive level. And again, your voice matters, so contact the congressman, the president. Just keep speaking up. You never know exactly where your voice fits in, but it all matters.
Gandhi said that every little thing you might do may seem insignificant, but it's most important that you do it. And you never know which letter or phone call or communication is going to be the one that pushes the person who has the power to make that decision, that pushes them in the right direction.
That's right.
So again, I appreciate all your advocacy.
Well, thank you, Ed. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks. So when we come back, we're going to talk with Andrew Rasmussen with the Des Moines Education Association about core curriculum, which is an issue that seems to be uniting some folks on the political left and right. That should be an interesting conversation. I also want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Great March for Climate Action for sponsoring this program. I want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe for being the sponsor for this segment of our show. Gateway is at 20th and Woodland. Please check them out, folks. Thank them for being a supporter of this alternative to talk radio, and thank them too, for being a great local business that supports a lot of things that go on in our community. I want to thank some of my other business supporters as well. Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut, where I had lunch yesterday. A great restaurant, and again, 90% of the food they serve comes from Iowa farms and Iowa producers. Some of my other restaurant clients include Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering in Beaverdale. Still plenty of nice weather left to check out the patio seating on the roof and also the outdoor seating on the sidewalk level as well. They're open for breakfast, lunch, supper, and also brunch on Sundays. I want to thank Ritual Cafe, one of my other restaurant clients, a cafe that serves wonderful paninis and also great coffee, great tea, and great smoothies. Just down the street from Ritual, the Fighting Burrito in the Nationwide building. Check them out, folks. Fighting Burrito. Custom-made burritos that you get to choose the ingredients and pay a very affordable price. Also located in Ames on Welch Avenue. I'll be back in just about 6 minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
But the smart money's on Harlem, and the moon is in the street, and the shadow boys are breaking all the laws. And you're east of East St. Louis, and the wind is making speeches, and the rain sounds like a round of applause.
Tom Waits. Love that tune. Welcome back to the conversation here on the Fallon Forum. Yep, it's time for the second segment of the show, among other things. It's time for a new beat on education. This is the time each week for we spend a half hour digging into some angle on education. We have talked a couple times about Montessori. We've talked about the Waldorf approach to education. We have had some conversation and need more on homeschooling. I'm still looking to land a guest on the International Baccalaureate program. And we are today talking about core curriculum. And certainly no stranger to this program, Andrew Rasmussen with the Des Moines Education Association finds himself in the interesting position of being on the same side of the issue as Steve King. Andy, what's wrong with you?
I apparently I've lost my mind. No. Strangely enough, the Common Core State Standards, as they're called, has brought together folks on the progressive side and some folks on the conservative side. And it all has to do with basically the biggest issue that we all agree on is who controls your kids' schools and education.
Let's start with the question of what is core curriculum.
Right. The Common Core State Standards are a set of standards for what kids are expected to know and be able to do in English and math, particularly that 46 states have now adopted.
So the federal government came up with these standards?
Well, technically no, because based on our Constitution, you remember that document, schools are supposed to be run by states, so that is a state power.
State and school districts,
and
really.
there are some federal laws that limit the federal government's ability to dictate curriculum and assessments. So they found a way around that You know, the federal government finds ways around things. I remember when seatbelt laws became.
They have their ways.
Speeding laws, they have ways to encourage participation.
Right. For example, adopt a 0.08 blood alcohol level for drunk driving, or you don't get a big bunch of federal road money.
That's right.
It works every time.
That's very similar.
So they've done something similar on this issue.
Similar in this
So they
case.
came up with the core curriculum standards.
Well, I'll tell you who wrote them.
Okay,
and then we can, because the issue kind of comes down to who wrote them, how are they going to be used, and what are the costs of this Common Core state standards. Because technically, all teachers are okay with standards. We need goals for kids to reach, and so that's not a bad idea. And even having some common across the country goals, not necessarily a bad idea. But let me tell you who wrote them, and we can get into that, and you can kind of imagine where the reasoning behind writing these might not necessarily be our kids. So they were written by a group that received $173 million from the Bill Gates Foundation. Achieve Incorporated.
A group. The name of the group?
Achieve Incorporated. It's a consulting firm that received the money from the Gates Foundation to assist the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State Schools Officers in commissioning the state standards. And so they,
and then somehow from there they went to Congress?
No, Congress. There's never been any actual state legislature or congressional action to actually approve these.
Okay. But what I mean, why is Bill Gates interested in education? I mean, maybe that's a silly question, but I think of Bill Gates. I think of relief work. I think of charitable work in Africa.
Right.
I think of really his love affair with Monsanto. I'm not really a fan, but
I mean, Bill Gates has
not that he hasn't done some good things, but still.
Yeah, he's taken an interest big time in education reform with quote marks, and has put money into looking at teacher evaluations, class sizes, many different areas. And this was his latest area of education that he's very interested in. So he gave that Achieve Incorporated consulting firm the money to sit down with those two other groups and commission the writing of these standards. Now, the standards were written by a working group that had 25 individuals for English, 25 individuals for math. Here's some of the breakdown of that group to give you a little bit more flavor of where these are coming from. So of those 25 individuals on the two teams, 6 were associated with the test makers from the College Board.
Wait, it's the test makers. So the businesses that make money,
absolutely,
preparing and administering tests.
Correct.
Wait, 6 out of the 25?
6 from the College Board, 5 from ACT, and 4 were from this Achieve Incorporated. 0 classroom teachers were on either of the working groups. So the groups that actually wrote the standards, classroom teachers.
Of the 50 people that were covering both math and English components of this curriculum, not a single teacher in the mix.
Not a single classroom teacher.
Well, clearly you were busy teaching kids.
Yeah, I was
you
very
couldn't
busy.
make it.
I was very busy. I had to turn down the invitation.
And your superintendent would never let you off for something as trivial as that.
It was mainly, as I look at the list of names, a lot of academics, professors, whatnot, and other representatives that had connections to assessment
from colleges.
Right.
Okay, so that's not so bad. They presumably would be somewhat empathetic with the classroom situation.
I mean, I will say that there is quite a difference, at least from my experience, in the instructional practices of college professors and classroom teachers at the secondary and elementary level. So, I don't know your experience in colleges, but I've ran into lots of professors who are very intelligent, amazingly intelligent.
I had great experience in college. It took me 10 years to finish my undergraduate degree.
But
for different reasons than it took John Bellucci.
Okay.
He was
no
partying,
togas.
I was traveling.
Okay, no togas for Ed. But
at least no drunken togas. Let's stop right there.
I mean, a lot of these people, I would put it, were removed from the realities of classrooms and classroom teaching.
Sure.
So those committee,
Was that by design? I mean, you would clearly. I mean, that's like. That has to be an intention, not an oversight. It has to be set up by design. I can't imagine you not wanting it that way.
It seems to be.
And what would the motive be?
Well, I mean, they had a defined purpose, I think, and that was to design standards that eventually these corporations could design curriculums and tests to sell to districts. That's my guess.
Because previously they weren't. These are new tests that were being created.
Right, and I can talk about the tests here in a second.
Okay.
So they did have feedback groups which could provide feedback once standards were written, but that feedback was confidential, could not be released to the public, and there was only one classroom teacher in the feedback groups. So in all of this, one real classroom teacher had any real input.
So again, I'm all right. I think I'm probably going too hard, and I'm trying too hard to assess motive. It looks pretty clear, like it's an economic problem,
right? And you'll see that the motive becomes even clearer.
All right, continue.
And I would like to say there were no parent groups, student groups, or the general public that was involved in the feedback process or the input process really until maybe towards the end. There was some general feedback, that they asked from the National Teachers Union's feedback, but by then everything had been written.
So are educators across the board opposed to these standards?
I would say that my National Teachers Union is supportive of the standards as standards. They are talking about common sense, Common Core implementation, which the implementation is where the rubber really meets the road, because we can have national standards on English and math and still be okay as long as we give some local control to local schools and teachers.
So this negates local control?
It appears that it will, and what's been happening in most of the other states that have adopted this, that is the
When do the standards go into effect?
The standards start to go into effect next year.
Okay, so they haven't even kicked off yet.
They're starting them in some states. They started some piloting of the tests in states like Indiana, New York, Kentucky, and you might want to ask. The second question is, why did states adopt them if they weren't developed? They weren't commissioned by state legislators. There was no legislative action made saying we need these.
So is this really? I mean, I hear core curriculum, and I presume that there are things required to be taught in the classroom. But this sounds like just a method of testing, regardless of what's taught in the classroom.
That's our fear, because in order to the way that these got adopted by 46 states, to put these in these states, the federal government could not do it because they cannot legally force curriculum or tests upon the states. So what they did, very ingenious, the Federal Department of Education put out $4.35 billion worth of competitive grants called Race to the Top. In order to qualify for those grants, which most states need money for education, one of the requirements was that you needed to adopt standards and assessments that get students, quote, college and career ready, and the federal government considers the Common Core state standards those standards that get kids college and career ready. So in order to get a bite of that money, a state has to adopt the Common Core state standards in order to be eligible for a competitive grant. Now, Iowa has not received a Race to the Top grant. Some people will say that's bad.
You think it's good?
Okay with that. I mean, we'd love to have money from the federal government, but not
there's always strings attached.
Not with the
Sometimes you can
attached.
look a gift horse in the mouth, especially if the horse that's the critter that's riding on the horse is a member of the U.S. Congress.
Well, they remind me of another part of a horse, but
but
one of the things that Iowa did fold the Common Core state standards into what they call the Iowa Core. So we do have them in the state in anticipation that we would be eligible somewhere down the road. Now, one of the concerns that I have as a professional too is there was very little field testing of these standards. They're very rigorous. There are no adjustments to these standards for ELL students, students with learning disabilities. Everyone's expected to meet these very high standards, even if they can't read English or have a learning disability that prevents them from doing well on the test. So there was no field testing of this. That most of the time when we adopt standards in curriculum, we have rigorous field testing for many years to make sure everything's okay before we use them in the classroom on your children.
So obviously part of your problem is that it takes away it diminishes the role of the teacher in providing the best education for the students as that teacher and as that school district and that building too, for that matter, deem appropriate.
Right, absolutely. I think most parents, if you sat down and talked with them, they want their kids' needs met at that local level, and who knows their needs best? The parents and the teachers that work with those kids every day. That is why we support local control for these kind of issues. Curriculum testing should be developed at the local level, the school level, in order to best fit what students need and the talent students have. I mean, you're musically talented, so.
And I play the accordion, but that's a different
multi-talented,
thing.
I should have just said.
Well, I was putting accordion playing in a separate category from music talent.
Right. But a good professional educator would use that information about you to develop assessments and activities that tap into your talents so that you can show me what you've learned in the best modality, that's what they call it, possible, rather than expect everybody to fit into one square peg. Everybody's doing multiple choice tests, doing a lot of reading and some writing, and kind of ignoring all the other modalities that students have to show us how they've learned. So, that's my biggest concern, is that local control is essential if we are actually concerned about educating the child and being, reacting to what that child needs, rather than what the federal government or a testing company.
So why do Andrew Rasmussen and Steve King have something in common on this issue? What would Steve King, and for that matter Chuck Grassley's, objection to core curriculum be?
Right. Well, it's the local control issue. However, on the right-wing side of things, they have a little different take on this. I couldn't bring any of my right-wing friends with me today. I guess I got to try harder at having some.
I could have provided several. Actually.
Well, yeah. Well, that's too bad. But they see behind this federal takeover of education, the ominous United Nations, something called Agenda 21 that Glenn Beck goes off on.
That's kind of crazy talk.
It's a little weird. Yeah, it's a little weird. But they see this as a UN takeover of schools, whereas my side of things, we see it as local control is good for progressive education.
Really with the two committees that put together the core curriculum being stacked with representatives from the businesses that will make a lot of money selling these standardized tests and administering these tests.
Right.
It clearly is, in my opinion, a corporate takeover.
Yes.
But how do they explain the notion that this might be a UN takeover? What interest would the UN have in running education?
I don't quite get that. Promote that liberal.
So pretend you're a right winger right now.
That liberal agenda that President Obama is trying to push on people. And this is just another example of him trying to teach our kids how to be liberals by taking over the education system and giving them lessons and standards and curriculum that forces upon them a liberal viewpoint. And that is what you'll hear a lot from right-wing folks who are against this, is that they see in the standards too much in the way of progressive ideas. There is a little, they're not all bad. There are some critical thinking elements to it, and often I've found it interesting in the past when critical thinking is brought up. Some of our conservative friends get a little frightened. I don't know why. They would be afraid of critical thinking, but you make your own, draw your own conclusions on that. But that's their biggest thing. They feel like it's Obama, like they feel he took over the healthcare industry. It's Obama and the UN coming for your kids' minds. So.
Well, that's a harder case to make, in my opinion. And again, maybe I'm biased as well, but I think you can make a strong case that there are forces looking at I think we spend I think taxpayers nationwide spend $600 billion a year on K through 12 education, and that's a big pot of money.
Yeah.
We have so much privatization going on: prisons, the military. All sorts of areas, transportation, and why not schools? And again, you've got recently we had 3 Iowa generals pushing early childhood education. I question why generals are pushing Iowa education, and I know that may be a bit of an aside, but I think it ties in with the some of the quote school reform initiatives. I hope to get Mark Jacobs on this program, but. Have not had a favorable response. He's the retired CEO of Reliant Energy, teaches business strategy at Iowa State University, but is putting out. The kind of stuff I'm hearing inclines me to believe that maybe not him as much as some others, but there is a strong interest in moving toward privatization.
Right. We have those elements here in Iowa. Mark Jacobs, I would say, would be one of the corporate ed reformers. We have a group called Students First, which has come into the state and spent some money in elections trying to elect mainly Republicans, spending money against Democrats in state legislative elections.
State legislative elections?
Yes, to try to push education reform, including they're especially looking at trying to gut teachers' labor unions so that we don't have collective bargaining rights, because they feel that is somehow improving education. So we do have those elements in this state as well. And one of the reasons why, the main reason why, really is profit. Going back to the Common Core, there is an estimate from, I believe it was a Fordham Institute did a study. The estimated cost to taxpayers nationwide of implementation of just the Common Core state standards and the testing is going to be around $8 billion.
Wow.
With most of that money going to private companies. Pearson, for example, is a testing corporation that's big into the design of the tests. Going to those companies that make the tests, the curriculum, the data systems. The tests are actually going to be done on computers. So they're computer-based tests, although mostly still multiple choice. They're computer-based tests. So that means that now schools are going to have to spend money on updating their computers.
The equipment, sure. Some other company will be making money on that.
Right. Well, maybe that's why Bill Gates is interested. I think he has a connection to computers. There's a lot of money to be made on this Common Core state curriculum.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of money to be made on online education. I mean, we had quite a conversation last year and the year before regarding two rural schools, two struggling schools that basically convince students in more, or parents of students in more urban districts to, quote, open enroll their student, their kid into the school district that in some cases could be 100 or more miles away.
Right.
Because your commuting just involves getting on a computer in the morning.
Right. Yeah. They do their ads on TV all the time. So.
Yeah. And though I think those two schools, I want to say they attracted about 90 students across the state.
I believe so. And there was the legislature did put limits on the number of students who could attend those.
And that did not grow in this past year, but that camel's nose is now under the tent.
Sure.
And it's not going to, it's hungry and it's going to keep going. I suspect there's going to be a strong push to see that continue.
Absolutely. I mean, there's money to be made here in the state of Iowa off education as well. And so when you look at all of these reforms, whether it's what Mark Jacobs is suggesting, the Common Core, the first question you have to ask is, did they ask parents, students, and teachers about this first? Because what I find most irritating about most of these reforms is it's people mainly who have not been in the classroom, who do not live in our communities, and who do not have children in our schools, who are coming up with these ideas and then kind of foisting them upon the states and schools to adopt with dollar signs in their eyes, not our children's best interest.
I mean, we're already so isolated as a society. I don't know whether you saw my weekly post on that, but I talked about how isolated we've become. Yeah. I mean, the whole structure of so much of our many of our institutions is designed to isolate people,
right.
and this is just a perfect example.
Right.
If you can get students out of their environment where they're actually interacting with teachers, with other students, I mean, to me, that's very frightening. Where your learning comes primarily in front of a computer screen. And I understand, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of these corporations that provide this online education, in terms of fulfilling the PE requirement, sent their students a jump rope.
Right, you get a jump rope and maybe a little red rubber ball, and you're told how to use them. And that's their PE class. So, you know. But, and I think also what we find with a lot of these reforms, too, is it also deprofessionalizes the teaching profession. It makes us into proctors for tests and test trainers, where we're given a script and we're told, here's what you read to the kids today, say these words, then give them this test. And it just takes away all the creativity, innovation, and professionalism from the profession of teaching. And also tries to isolate us by having us compete against each other for student test scores, and in some states bonuses, and in some states whether or not we keep our jobs. So it's really breaking down the professionalism and the collaboration between teachers, especially in states that have gone much further than this, than Iowa has, which we've been kind of lucky to avoid a lot of the worst stuff so far.
Now, how do you, again, looking at the polls on this, most people polled in a recent Iowa poll by the Des Moines Register think that these benefits, specifically the benefits passed at the state level, but again, those dovetail with what we're talking about. They think those benefits will benefit, those reforms rather, will benefit students.
Right.
By a significant margin. How do you address that?
A couple of things. I think, number one, there was also a AP poll that was talked about in the Sunday Register about parent support of standardized tests. And then I looked at the actual poll and the questions. It all depends on the way the question is asked a lot of the times. But also I think, and this is a failing, I think, of teachers' unions, is we have not sat down with parents in a real way in a lot of places and talked about these issues. How does testing affect your kids and what happens in the classroom? What will these reforms do? I think in part it is because a lot of teachers are afraid to speak up about these and be seen as a troublemaker. But when you sit down and actually talk with parents about these things one-on-one, you get a very different answer than a Des Moines Register Iowa poll.
Yeah, and what do you do about it as somebody who wants to get that information out? I guess you got to buy your own newspaper, maybe?
Apparently, or maybe start a radio show.
Yeah,
but you have seen examples in Chicago, Seattle, other places around the country where teachers and parents have started to push back against a lot of this. And just this past weekend in Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel wanted to tear down a cultural center. There was a Latino cultural center on the grounds of a school that he was closing. He loves closing schools in Chicago, and there were parents being arrested.
They don't need a cultural center. They've got soccer fields.
That's right. There were parents being arrested trying to stop this. So when parents and teachers start to talk together and work together and realize what's happening to their schools, there's still a chance they can fight back for their schools. So
yeah. Well, it's I suspect there's going to be a lot of heated debate on this issue in the coming session as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could see a different makeup at the state. Well, no, what am I saying? We won't see a different makeup yet. I'm getting my municipal and school board elections mixed up. But we could see an interesting change and a new makeup rather next year.
Right.
In the 2015 session.
Governor Fallon? No.
It could be Governor Hatch, Olson, Krause, or maybe Branstad again.
Right. Right.
Now, Branstad has come under a lot of criticism on a lot of issues, but on education, some have given him the benefit of the doubt, saying he's not his proposals aren't as draconian. What's your take on Governor Branstad as an education governor?
Yeah, I think that his proposals so far have met the political reality of having one chamber of the legislature that is not of his party's control. I think we would.
Which one, the House?
The Senate.
Well, come on. The House is so extreme. I kind of wonder.
Right.
I mean, I think he might have had more fights with them on education than he did with the Iowa Senate.
But I think he's kind of adjusted to that reality because he is a founding member of ALEC. And a lot of the reforms that are going on in states like Florida and elsewhere that are much more draconian are ALEC-sponsored ideas. So I believe if he would have had full control of the state government, we would have seen a much more aggressive approach to what I call ed deform. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, Andrew Rasmussen with the Des Moines Education Association. We've been talking core curriculum and conflicts around what the appropriate role of business and corporations, what their role should be in education. And the interesting reality that there's a whole bunch of folks on the political right who agree with Andy that the core curriculum is problematic. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, again, for sponsoring this program. I also want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. That event is coming up on November 9th. It's a great opportunity to take your business idea, turn it into a reality, and learn how to make all the new changes in healthcare and tax codes and just how to write your business plan. So check it out online, iesusa.org. I also want to thank Diana's Wedding Cakes out of Newton and remind folks that you can get more information about Diana's on my website, fallonforum.com, as you can about Dan Kelly and his real estate business. Also, Story County Veterinary Clinic on Highway 30, just east of Ames on the way to Nevada. And don't forget Sergeant's Garage. That's at 6th and College. And Graham Gormley's done a great job at fixing up my vehicles for a long, long time. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow.
calendar girl. The boys just dive right off the cars and splash into the street. And when they're on a roll, she pulls a razor from her boot, and 1,000 pigeons fall around her feet. So put a candle in the window, and a kiss upon his lips.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.